Welcome once again. This is John Schulman, 720 and 720. We are very fortunate to have another great guest and another ESPN analyst that I don't know why he is an ESPN analyst. I think he should be a college basketball coach. But Fran Fraschilla, welcome to 720 and 720.
Oh, John, it's great to be on with you. You know how much we love talking basketball and get to do it on a podcast and help a lot of coaches out. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I went back. I always go back, and once I met you, in like 05 or 06 in a championship game down in Charleston, South Carolina. But I never could figure out this. You were a head coach for 9 years, and you went to 8 postseason tournaments in 9 years. And I ain't talking CIT, CBI. And I went NIT, NCAA. You were 8 postseasons in 9 years. You actually knew what you were talking about at one time.
Yeah, no. As a matter of fact, no, I'd have to disagree. I'm an expert now because I don't lose any games on TV.
You didn't lose a lot. You didn't lose a lot before.
Yeah, no, I know it. I've had a great career. I really have. I've been around the game my whole life. The way I look at my coaching career, that was halftime. You know, I spent 23 great years as an assistant to some great coaches, including Gary Williams, who's a Hall of Famer, Rick Barnes, who's headed only to 700 wins. And, you know, in 2002, I had a chance to go to ESPN after 9 years as a head coach, and I thought it would just be a little halftime break and I would go back to coaching. But TV fit me. It fit my lifestyle because I had 2 sons at that point that were, 10 and 7 years old. And I said, you know what? I get to hang out with my kids pretty much all year, although there's a lot of traveling, but it's not the stress of coaching. And I still get to be around basketball. And so honestly, John, I never went back. I enjoyed spending time with my kids. Both of them love the game and they're in the game now. And I don't think that would have happened, either one of them coaching right now, if it wasn't for the fact that I got to spend a lot of time with them. And so I look at it as I've had 2 careers in basketball, one coaching, one broadcasting, and I really wouldn't change very much.
Well, I often ask myself this and other coaches, you know, on your deathbed, you talk about your boys. On your deathbed, I don't think you're going to wish that, oh, man, if we had just recruited that other kid, we could have gone to one more NCAA tournament. Nobody gives a rip at that moment. What you give a rip at that moment is, what did you do for your family? And your boys are both in basketball, and that's a gift that you gave them because you were able to spend time with them at that moment.
Yeah, there's no question. And, you know, I look back every now and then and say, man, you know what? Bill Self and Tom Izzo and, Tom Crean, Rick Barnes, these guys were all contemporaries of mine. And, you know, obviously those guys have had great success. But I don't ever look back and second guess because second part of my career has gone really well, and I love the game. And I'm around the game every single day, even when I'm not traveling. You and I talked off the air. Well, I didn't tell you this off the air, but in November, I saw 46 Division I teams, you know, just because of the way the schedule worked out. And I was doing some preparation for the ESPN. I had a bunch of games. I watched one of my son's Villanova teams play a couple times. And so I saw 46 Division I teams. Must have been about 30 games. And so I'm not away from the game. If anything, I'm as immersed in the game as I've ever been. And it's something I have a lot of passion for. So been very fortunate to be around the game and just have, serve different roles, if you will.
Well, I know one role, you watch a lot. You're also the European guy, so you know what's going on over there. You know, I guess my first question to you is, we're trying to help young coaches and players with this podcast. Is I guess number one that I want to know, how did they, when I say they, overseas in European and in Russia and you're talking about China, how did they play catch up? How did they catch up as fast? Because I'm old like you, and I remember when USA dominated. How did they catch up so fast, and what do we need to do to really catch back up or even the score?
Well, here's what I would say. It's a very simple process. We now do dominate the world in basketball. And that's been really true, John, since Coach K and Jerry Colangelo took over USA again. Not only at the senior level, which is the NBA guys, but we really do dominate the junior level now. I mean, our under 16, under 17, under 18 teams, they usually are really hard to beat. We usually dominate under 19. Canada beat us a couple of years ago. Team that Coach Cal was coaching, they had RJ Barrett, who went off on us. But here's how it all worked. And you and I kind of remember this. But 40, 50 years ago, some of the greatest coaches in our country, the UB Browns, Dr. Jack Ramseys, the Chuck Daly's, later on the Bob McKillops, they brought the game of basketball around the world and to clinics all over the place. And so the international coaches studied our game, and I always look at it as being in the Louvre in Paris and looking at the Mona Lisa. American coaches look at the Mona Lisa from straight on, and we see a masterpiece. Well, the international coaches might be standing off on the side, so they see the Mona Lisa from a different perspective, a different angle, if you will, and that would be the game of basketball. They see the game of basketball from a different angle, and I wouldn't say they made it better, but they certainly made us think about our game. And now when you see all of the pick and roll, all of the spread pick and roll, all of the ball movement that was once common in our game, well, the international coaches helped perfect that, and now it's floated back to the NBA. We see it in college, but by no means do I feel like they made the game. They made it better, but we certainly still have some of the greatest coaches in the world in the United States. But we now take ideas from other people, and we don't just feel, at least the good coaches here, don't feel like we know it all. So when you do see a team like a Penn or a Furman or an Alabama Huntsville or Princeton or Bob McKillop's Davidson teams move the ball, we've been playing that way for 100 years. It's just that we got away from it at times, and the international coaches have reminded us that this game is a great free-flowing game.
No, they did, didn't they? They kind of went when we went away from the basics. They really started with the basics, and then we got away from it a little bit, and it was just a good little reminder for us. Correct?
Absolutely, and now you see it. I see some great ball movement coaches at the high school and college level, and certainly when you see the vintage Golden State teams or Greg Popovich teams, great teams in San Antonio, the one thing that you think of is ball movement. So it's coming back into our game, and I do think the skill level and the fundamentals are better at the college level now than they were 10 years ago, because we see it, there's been an emphasis on it. And hey, if it's good enough for the Golden State Warriors, it's good enough for college and high school kids. At least that's the way I feel about it.
Well, I had an assistant. We were talking about one time at Chattanooga. We were talking about maybe changing our offense and trying this and trying that. And I had an assistant say a very profound statement to me. He said, "Coach, it really doesn't matter what we run as long as we'll share the ball. If we'll move the ball and share the ball, it really doesn't matter what you run because it's all pretty similar. If you'll just share the ball, move the ball, life's good."
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I see so many different styles. I think the key, like it has been for a long time, you and I grew up in the passing game. When Bob Knight was running passing game, and then pick and roll has been in vogue recently. Now we're back to five men touching the ball on most possessions, at least with the good teams. And so I would agree with you. There's lots of ways to skin a cat, but I think you have to. And I know you'd agree with this. You have to get the defense moving side to side, and you got to get the floor spread, and that opens it up for whether it's cutting or what kids do great nowadays is dribbling the ball. It's taking advantage of guys who can penetrate the defense. And so there's no one way to do it right. It's so much fun for guys like you and me to watch it and see coaches experiment with their offenses and pick and choose from each other. And that's why some of the coaches I've mentioned that you and I know pretty well, those teams are fun to watch.
Well, I still think the dribble can be used in the right way. I still think you got to move it, and then attack.
Yep.
And because if you're just pounding, I think you talked about it at the academy because we were so fortunate to have you here in Chattanooga for that. Did you talk about the boomerang, like get rid of it and getting it back? And then taking it. I've watched it more and more after you talked about it. I watch it more and more. I was like, Fran does know what he's talking about. Look, that's the boomerang right there. Correct?
Let me tell you, stealing it, and let's explain it for people on the podcast. You know, everything in basketball happens for as a reaction. Everything in offensive basketball, I believe, happens as a reaction to the defense. So, you know, what have we seen most recently? Teams are switching more. Well, you know, you and I both know that when there's a big little switch and you try to throw the ball into the big man in the post on a mismatch, well, the entire defense can swarm that mismatch, you know, and but what now we're seeing is what I call the boomerang, and it's not my term, it's been used many times, is now on a pick and roll there's a switch and the guard's being guarded by a big. Well, right away the defense is alerted. Everybody's ready to help on the drive because the guard is quicker than the big. Well, what the boomerang is, the guard throws it back to his big teammate who's got a mismatch on the perimeter, but he then he throws it right back to the guard who now has a live dribble and can attack with a little more space because we moved the defense, and it's become a very effective way to take advantage of mismatches. So, and switching, I might add. So, for every defensive reaction, the offense has to have a reaction, and then you see the game just ebb and flow back and forth, and that's what's so much fun about the game.
All right, you become a head coach. And I still think you and Seth need to be in coaching. I enjoy watching. I think I'd like you better off radio because you both are kind of unattractive people, both you and Seth. All right, but you become a head coach tomorrow. Offensively, tell some young coach. Offensively, defensively, tell us your philosophies on. You know, you just went to 8 out of 9 postseasons. Tell me how it's changed, how it's not changed. What would you do?
Well, first of all, the one thing I think young coaches, miss, many, not all, but many, is that you can't run any kind of offense unless your team is versed every single day in the fundamentals of offensive basketball. And it's as simple as passing, catching, shooting, dribbling. Those are all essential. When I was coaching, and I would do this exactly the same way today, our first 20 to 25 minutes was just a series of fundamental drills. And I used to tell the guys, even when we were good, and we were in the middle or late in the season, and we might have been sometimes 19-5, or season was going well, I would tell the guys at the beginning of practice when we got to our very beginning, don't get bored if you're getting better. That was the term I used. Don't
get bored if you're getting better.
Right. Don't get bored if you're getting better. And I used to tell these guys, look, I'm bored with the first 25 minutes of practice, just so everybody's clear. It's not like I'm not going to correct you, but I'm bored because I want to get started with 5-on-5 and the tricky plays and the defensive adjustments. But I also said the reason we're good, and I would pick a guy out and say, hey, John, when's the last time you traveled this year? Well, Coach, I haven't traveled. That's right. You haven't traveled because we do this damn footwork stuff every day.
Absolutely.
We'd have fun with it. But the thing was that I feel now that the one thing that can never change, regardless of what kind of offensive philosophy you have, is that there are certain things that you have to do every day in order to instill the kind of habits that will allow your 5-man team offense to work. So that's the very thing that I would not change. I was also a little ahead of my time with pick and roll. We didn't run a lot of it, but we ran pick and roll as a misdirection. Oftentimes, you mentioned triple penetration. I would try to run I was a big set play guy. I would probably be a little bit more in the flow or motion realm nowadays, and run sets into flow and motion. When I think of flow, I think of 4 or 5 guys being able to catch and handle the ball on a possession, spread the floor, maybe leave the low post open, for dribble penetration. But no matter what I decided I would do, and I've seen some really good stuff through the years, and I love watching offense, as a young coach, you can never forget that if your players can't pass, catch, make layups, make shots, it doesn't matter how tricky your offense is. It's the old saying. I know you know this one. I'm trying to develop tricky players, not tricky plays. And you only do that if you make it a point to make sure that the fundamentals of the game are emphasized, and it's got to be every day. It can't be 2 or 3 days a week. The footwork and the catching, passing, dribbling, shooting, that's got to be every single day.
Well, there's a common theme here. Everybody we've talked to, Alan Stein, don't get bored with the basics. We just did a podcast with Ken Duke, who's a PGA golfer, and he was like, listen, that's why those guys on the driving range. Don't think that Tiger and Phil and Dustin John. I mean, you don't get bored with the basics because the best have mastered the basics. And we think we're beyond that, and half the teams I watch in high school can't shoot a left-handed layup, and don't know how to shoot a right-handed layup. And then you go on to the next concept with like UAH, they're working on layups off the opposite foot to quick them up.
Yep.
And so you can take that basic and take it a step forward. All right, I've got a couple things you talked about, and I thought this was very interesting on ball screen offense, on rescreening. If certain things happen, if I'm going to ball screen and the D did this, I'm going to rescreen every single time. You remember talking about that?
Absolutely.
All right, so let's talk about that, because I think that's a very simple concept that high school coaches, college coaches, pro coaches, elementary coaches can do. All right, go ahead.
Well, you know what? If you're going to be a ball screen coach, and just about everybody has some aspect of ball screen in their offense. Well, if I'm guarding let's say it's a point guard who has some combination of these attributes, very quick, maybe he's not a good outside shooter, and he can get to the basket. Well, there's no reason for me to fight over the screen when I can go under the screen. We've been doing that for 100 years. I think Dr. Naismith probably did that. And so, and this is a European concept. And so European coaches figured out that, okay, when the defender goes under the screen, which happens all the time, the big man is going to turn around and recognize it immediately because it's drilled, just like the fundamentals we talked about. And he's going to try to rescreen the defender on the ball. And the guard knows this is coming because it's automatic when his man goes under a ball screen, that his teammate's going to turn around and rescreen that defender. And now as he comes back off the rescreen, you're hoping to create some confusion on the part of the defense. And what you're hoping is that as you come off the screen, there's now a big man on you and not the guy that was guarding you who went under the screen. So very simple concept called rescreening, and it takes advantage of a team who wants to go under the screen. And so Steve Nash taught me this. I was at a Steve Nash Nike camp one year, and he was tremendous with guard play. And he said, in pick and roll, you have to have a solution for every defense. And you and I can figure out that there's probably 7 or 8 ways to guard pick and roll. We can trap it, we can hard hedge, we can soft hedge, we can go under, we can ice it on the side, all these fancy terms now. But Steve said you must have a solution for every pick and roll defense. Otherwise, the defense is going to have the advantage, and your players, more importantly, are going to look at you and say, my coach doesn't have an answer for this defense. And so the rescreen is a very simple concept, and it's a solution for a defense where the guard goes under the ball screen.
See, I think that's great. I think it's easy. I think if you take anything from this podcast, that's an easy thing you can take. But going back to your talking about having a solution, I think great point guards come off ball screens, and they come off ball screens like Peyton Manning played quarterback. They are reading. Yep. They're not reading just their player. Their player's out of the play. They're reading, all right, how am I getting defended on this ball screen? All right, they're going to hard hedge. So they're reading the next guy who is helping on the roll. And so they can read all kinds of things. And I think great point guards are like quarterbacks off of dealing with the ball screen, is that they're reading the complete D. It's so easy to, bad point guards come off a ball screen to go score the ball. All right, good point guards and elite point guards are the ones that can make that read. Do I need to go score the ball? Am I reading the hedge guy? Are they going to double it? If they double it, that's fine. I'm going to take some retreat dribbles, and I'm going to bring the double to me, give everybody time to come up, and then we're just going to go attack and play 4-on-3. A solution.
You're exactly
Well, that's
Yeah.
great. A solution to have a point guard needs to have a solution to every, or anybody coming off a ball screen needs to have solutions for every way it's guarded.
Well, here's another way to put it, John, and this is something that I learned in TV. You know, in TV, you try to explain the game so simply that, you know, like my mom doesn't know basketball, but she's always like, when I'm talking the game, I want my mom to be able to say, boy, you know what, I knew what you were talking about. You know, she didn't know basketball from a pumpkin, but I try to teach the game on TV in a way that everybody can understand it. And this is what I learned from Matt Dellavedova. How about that? I was doing a St. Mary's game, and now he's in the NBA, the great Australian point guard. And here's the best way, and I think this is probably the only thing I've ever invented in basketball. I called it the 3 levels of point guard play. And it's exactly what you just talked about. The first level is, assuming I'm the point guard, it's me and my man and the guy guarding me. And he should be no factor in pick and roll at the first level, because I ought to be able to be good enough that although he's guarding me, I don't even know he's there because I've got my head up and I'm surveying. The second level of pick and roll is, how am I being defended at the point of the screen by the big guy? And if you drill that enough, the second level of pick and roll is should be easy too, because we can attack, we can split a hard hedge, we can bounce out off of a screen and then attack the big if there's a switch. All those solutions we talked about. The great point guards see the pick and roll at level 3. If we execute the pick and roll, the 3 defenders in the help position have to be able to do something to help the screener and the man guarding the ball. And so great point guards can see at level 3, and they can find the open man, whose man in the help side has to help on the pick and roll. And that's why you see great point guards coming off a ball screen and throwing to the opposite corner to the shooter, because that's where the open man is. So I describe it as level 3 pick and roll. You got to be able to see at level 3, because level 1 and level 2 should be, instinct, second nature.
I got this from Van Gundy on a ball screen. You remember back in the day, you just get tape after tape in the summer and watch every tape you could watch.
Yes.
Coming off a ball screen, you got to take, we used to talk about what dribbles. You have to at least take 2 dribbles coming off a ball screen. And
yes.
one dribble, they win. Your first dribble should be a kind of a read dribble. How are they doing it? How are they defending you? And the second dribble or more, depends on how they're doing it. And so if you're just taking one dribble coming off a ball screen, then you don't make any read. They win that battle, and it's over. You've got to at least take 2 or more in kind of what you're talking about. But that 3 levels, let me just tell you something. You're pretty good. I may have to pay you for this podcast because you're pretty good at what you do.
Nope. Hey, man, we share. We share.
All right.
That's the beautiful thing about the game. We share, and I don't mind sharing that, and I steal from everybody else. And when I think of something original, which is rarely every couple of years, I love to share it.
All right, before we go to D, let me ask you this, because I love this, and it's completely away from the game. Post presence. What's your thought? Is the post ever going to come back down there? Are we ever going to throw the ball back in the post? Is it gone forever? Or are we?
No, it's not gone. It's cyclical. You know what? Right now, you're starting to see it because you're seeing a lot of switching. And again, passing's not great. At the high school and the junior high and the college level. So you can't really take advantage of it as much in switching situations. And I think what I'm seeing now is, first of all, I do think the post is going to come back as an offensive weapon. But now I think what you have to do if you play against switching teams is I know I've stolen this from somebody, is board the switch. Board, like backboard. Board the switch. So if we have a switch situation where a guard's on a big, just send your guy to the glass. Don't panic. Keep running your offense. And then when a shot goes up, it's really important for him to, especially try to get to the weak side of the shot, opposite of where the shot comes from. And we try to board the switch by getting the offensive rebound. And I'll tell you, here's one for you, John, that I stole. I got this from the great Sonny Smith, who's well known in your part of the country.
Absolutely. He's East Tennessee redneck like me.
Well, let me tell you, he's one of the greatest, and he taught me a long time ago. design your offense with the missed shot in mind.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how much that helped me. When I used to look at my sets that I was going to put in before the season, I'd say, okay, now when the shot goes up, where's my 4 and 5 on this play? And we always tried to get our 4 and 5 on a shot that wasn't a post up to the backside of the basket, because that's where they could do the most damage on the offensive glass. And so I do think the postman's coming back in, and you can throw it in there and develop post presence in there. But you also got to take advantage of the fact that those big guys can get you to the backside and get you extra possessions, because when I hear and have used it many times at clinics, giving Sonny the credit, design your offense with the missed shot in mind, I simply say, well, look, even if you make 45% of your shots, you're going to miss 55%. So why not get some of those back, those possessions? And it's something Sonny taught me, and it always stayed with me as I talked offense.
I still think, and especially in today's age, nobody throws it in the post. So in my brain, if no one throws it in the post, I was a double down in the post guy. That's what I was good at, and that's what I felt comfortable with. But now nobody will double in the post because there's no reason to even work on it. If you will throw the ball in the post, I don't think anybody knows how to defend it. And so I think if somebody would come back up and start throwing it in the post and trying to get a post seal, I think you would have a tough time defending it, because I don't think anybody works on it anymore because no one sees it anymore. All right, let's go to the defensive side. And by the way, Sonny Smith, Fran, do you have any, I mean, you're a New York guy, so you're a very sophisticated guy. Do you have any idea where Sonny's from? Do you have any idea, Fran?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, he's from East Tennessee.
Yeah, but where in East Tennessee? I mean, you got to give us credit up there.
I'm going to say the Tri-Cities.
All right, but Tri-Cities is, come on, man. That's such a Jeopardy you would lose. All right, Sonny Smith is from Roan Mountain, Tennessee. He went Roan Mountain. He went to Cloudland High School, played at Milligan. Who was his teammate at Milligan? You have any idea? He was
Dale Harris.
Dale Harris. Yeah, that's good, man. I'm proud of you, buddy.
Come on now. Dale's one of my defensive gurus. Let me tell you something. I've been reading Dale's books literally since you're going to laugh now. The greatest defensive book I've ever read is called Multiple Defenses for Winning Basketball. It was published in 1971 by a guy that was the head coach at Earlham College in Richmond, Indiana. His name was Delmer Harris. And when I was a young high school college kid, I think I stole that book out of the library, and I never put it back because it was my defensive Bible forever. And Dell later updated it with a book called Winning Defense. But Dell's a good friend, and to me, he's one of the defensive geniuses really in the last 50 years. So if you can find that book, Winning Defense, a high school, college, junior high coach would get a lot out of it.
Well, where do you think I came up with our double downs in the post? So we came out with it from Dale Harris, and I thought he was here because he was a Milligan guy, and I'm from Johnson City, and so I stole that. And then whenever I had a question, I would call Coach Harris and ask him, and that's where we got our double downs. All right, you're gonna be a head coach again. What would you do defensively? Let's say you're in high school or in college. Don't worry about pros. What would you do defensively right now? And let's try to help some young coaches.
Well, I would definitely mix my defenses a little more than I did. And there's a reason. There's a story behind this. When I was, and you know this, having coached, at Chattanooga, that sometimes when you're the best team in the league, or you have the best athletes, you can play one defense. And so I equated at Manhattan College. I think in 4 years I might have played 6 possessions of zone the entire 4 years. But we had at that level, we had what I would call a Nolan Ryan fastball. We threw it 99 our man-to-man defense, and it was unhittable. And then when I got to the Big East, we tried to play man-to-man exclusively. Same defensive principles, same things I believed in, and I'll get into that in a second. But the level of athletes was better, and my athletes at St. John's were pretty much just slightly above average. So, our man-to-man defense, our fastball was probably 92, and so it was very hittable. So I would make sure, unless you have the best athletes in the league, that you would at least have a change-up defense. and play some zone and maybe press 3/4 court. And Oregon does a great job. Dana Altman, they'll go with a little 1-2-2 press with two safeties back there. And if they think that you're better than them, that press just is going to milk the shot clock, which I know well, not all high school coaches have. But if they think they're better than you, they'll come after you with that press. So you can really ratchet it up or down. So that would be the first thing, John. I would probably mix my defenses a little bit more. But I would say this, you got to be great at one defense. And someone will say, well, what about Boeheim's 2-3 zone? And I describe that. Are you ready for this? It's like a Mariano Rivera cutter. You know it's coming. It's going to break off the table, and you still can't hit it. So if you're going to master one defense, it doesn't always have to be man. But I do think you got to have the ability, unless you're the best team in your league, to keep an offense a little bit off balance and mix and match a little bit. Now, having said that, just like our offensive philosophy, and I was a man coach, and we spent an awful lot of time on man defense. But here's how I would wrap it all up. You emphasize defense, and you have to practice offense. And by that I mean we were so good defensively at Manhattan, particularly. Coaches would say to me, "Well, it seems like you spend 70% of your time on defense." And I would say, "Absolutely not. We spend about 35% of our time on defense. We need more time on offense to perfect it because there's more timing and ball movement involved. But defensively, we emphasize our defense more. We work on offense more."
I thought when I became a head coach, I was, when I worked for Lebo, I was the defensive guy. That's all I did. Because Jeff was offensive. When you become a head coach and your offense is flowing and you're watching your O and you feel great at the end of practice, well, your D was really bad. And then when your D dominates your offense, you're happy with your D and your offense was bad. I think coaches could do a better job. I think you can coach defense 100% of the time in practice. Maybe you not as a head coach, but have an assistant or two assistants focusing on your defensive side. And so that guys don't, when you're the head coach and you're working on your O and you're watching your O, you can still box out on the defensive side, but those guys don't think they have to because you're not watching the D, you're watching the O. Does that make sense?
Well, John, let me tell you something. You just said something very profound for young coaches right there. And I'm going to tell you something. I've heard this said about a few coaches. Well, he can watch all 10 and know what's going on. They say that about Coach Brown, Larry Brown, a lot. Oh, he can watch all 10. I'm here to tell you that a good basketball coach can see all 10. I mean that. Like, what you said is absolutely right. I used to I paid attention to both, even when we were working on one side of the ball. I've absolutely feel that young coaches need to train their eyes. And I'm not saying I was great at this, but I think that really good coaches can see all 10. Like when you're working on, to your point, man offense, and you're scoring. Well, heck, there's a reason you're scoring. Your defense didn't guard what you ran well. And I'll tell you what I used to do, so that my defense wouldn't get ahead of the offense in practice. I would stand behind the team on the baseline, facing the offense, and I would be on the baseline. They could see me. The point guard was at midcourt, and I wouldn't let the defense turn around. But I would give the offense my hand signals of our offensive set, so we could run the offense at least initially until the defense knew what was coming. Because obviously they're all on the same team; they know my plays. But it was really important for us to be able to, for me to be able to watch all 10. And even if we scored, we would make the defensive adjustments right then and there. And, and for young coaches, to wrap up your point, I don't want to hear that you're an offensive coach or you're a defensive coach. But it's not football. You need to be a coordinator. I honestly, and I think that the best football coordinators, I know this is true of Bill Belichick, who they say knows offense as well as he knows defense. But basketball coaches need to be great on both sides of the ball. And I think it's a cop-out when you say, well, I'm only good on the offensive end. I let my assistants handle the defensive end. You may do that because you have trust in them, but I think you have to know both sides of the ball.
Alan LaForce, my mentor, used to talk about, if you don't know offense, you can't teach D. Very simple. You have to know
correct.
because you've got to know what they're wanting out of it to be able to stop it. I tell you what I started doing. I loved, and because I love football coaches. I think football coaches are pretty good guys and cool guys, and I love how they watch. But I always wanted to be a coordinator because I always wanted to sit up top. So I started in practice. I started trying to find a place that I could watch practice and I could coach practice, but from above the court. That the guys I would still be able to stop practice. So I would challenge basketball coaches to, they don't have to for the whole practice, but find an area. We pressed a lot. And so I would try to find a spot a little higher up, and then you could coach from above, almost like you're in the press box at a football game. All coordinators in a press box, they're playing a video game. They ain't playing Fortnite. They're playing football, and they're just moving around their pieces. And so the same thing with basketball coaches. If you'll watch the game, if you'll watch practice from above, you can really watch all 10 guys. That's a lot easier view. It's a better view, and football coaches get that view every Sunday as they're preparing for that next week. Basketball coaches very rarely get that view, but it's a good view.
Yeah, and I think it's great. It's great for you to be able to teach your kids based on what you're seeing, because you can go watch the film later and find out. But I think you're exactly right. The instant feedback. I also think this about that. That's such a great point you're making, because I think sometimes we get into a rut as coaches, like same thing every day. Now, we talked about don't get bored if you're getting better, and I certainly subscribe to that. But I think it's fun some days to change things around at practice. And all of a sudden my coach is up there in the top of the bleachers and he's watching, and the assistant coaches are running practice. I think that's great. I think it's a good change up. It keeps the kids on their toes. It breaks up the monotony a little bit, and you get a great view, and you're able to instantaneously give them feedback on what you see that they're doing well and maybe what they're not doing well. So I think that's a great point.
Make your coaches, make your players take a 2-minute period and let your players coach themselves in an end of the game situation and see what they come up with. But they got to run your stuff. I mean, you could do some interesting stuff during practice. I ain't gonna lie to you. I think we could talk for another 4.5, 5 hours.
No doubt about it.
But we're gonna keep this. We're gonna cut this, and we're gonna keep it quick. Fran, thank you so much for joining us. You're a wealth of knowledge. I still, we as old coaches and people that love the game, we do appreciate the Fran Fraschilla and Seth Greenberg are doing ESPN. As an old coach, I miss you on the sidelines because you were really good on those sidelines. But we do appreciate you being in the booth and helping us and letting us enjoy college basketball, because there's nothing better than college basketball. So we thank you for that, and we thank you for your time this morning.
No, I appreciate it, John. Great being with you, and I'm glad that what you're doing is helping coaches. I think that's really cool.
Well, you helped an awful lot. If people don't get something out of this, then something's wrong with it. So thanks so much, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you.